Hey, ladies and gentlemen, 4-1 is when we really move into things that we're going to call algebra. We did some of these things already when we were doing the percent equation because we had part, percent, and whole. We would find them from the problem and then we would replace the letter in the equation with the number that's in the problem. We didn't call it algebra, but that's kind of what we were doing. We were solving for a variable. So when we look at your book, if you go to the 4-1 section, this is the example 1 and try it, and 2 and 3 that's in your book. So if you want to take notes and follow along, that would be very smart of you to do so you can reference it. So in this equation, we have to know how to write an equation and then how to solve an equation. So this one here says Masumi started with $217 in her bank account. She deposits $25.50 each week and never withdraws any money. What expression can Masumi use to determine her bank account balance after W weeks? Okay, so this is a writing an equation problem. So the way that we would write an equation or determine how we write an equation is we have to find out if there is something that takes place more than once and if there is something that takes place only once. So in this case, the thing that takes place only once is that she deposits $25 each week. Okay, the thing that happens once is that Masumi started with $217 in her bank account. Okay, so if there's something that occurs more than once, that's going to be our number that we put next to a variable. And a variable is just a letter. So when we put something next to a variable like this, it means that we are going to multiply something, whatever number W, however many weeks, because W is weeks, ends up being, we're going to multiply that by 25.50. The thing that happens once in this equation is that 217 that she has in her account. It only occurs once. We don't have to multiply it by a variable, so it is just a standalone. And it's called a constant when it's alone because it doesn't change, right? We're not going to multiply it by anything, so it stays constant. When it's next to a letter, when it's with a letter, it's called a coefficient. So those are some terms that are going to come up a little later on. So we've written our equation now, the 217, the way we would find out how much money Masumi has in her account after however many weeks. We can put in any number for this W here. We can put any number there and find out how much money she would have after that number of weeks. So that's how we write an equation. So then it says, convince me, how do you determine which value to use for the constant and which value to use for the coefficient? Okay, the way we know what to use for the constant here is that that is the thing that only happens once. And the way that we determine what value works to use for the coefficient is that is the thing that happens more than once. Okay, so that's how we determined how to write this equation here. So we're going to go to example 2 and try it here. So this one is evaluating an expression is what that means. And it just says solve it pretty much. It can't say solve because there's not really an equal sign, but we can figure out what the equation is trying to say. So this question says the expression 9.99D plus 12.99C can be used to find the total cost of however many pounds of almonds and however many pounds of cashews. For the pounds of almonds, we're going to use the letter D, and for the pounds of cashews, we're going to use the letter C. Then it goes on to say, how much does it cost to buy 1.5 pounds of almonds and 2.5 pounds of cashews? Okay, so pounds of almonds, the pounds of almonds occurs more than once. It actually happens 1.5 times, and the pounds of cashews happens more than once. So our equation, both of these are going to have a variable. That's why it had a D and a C. Okay, so D goes with almonds and C goes with cashews. So let's see what that looks like here. So the first step is to evaluate the expression for the given values. The total cost of almonds plus the total cost of cashews. So you're buying both of these We need to find out how much you're going to spend altogether. So here's that equation, right? $99.99 for 1 pound of almonds and $12.99 for 1 pound of cashews. So depending on how many pounds we're going to buy, we can use this equation to calculate it. If it's 1 and 1, then it's just $9.99 plus $12.99. But in this case, it's 1.5 and 2.5. Okay, so now that we have the equation, we know how many pounds of almonds we're going to have. So every time we find a D, we're going to put 1.5. And every time we find a C, we're going to put 2.5 because C and 2.5 are equal in this case. The pounds of almonds we're going to buy is 2.5, and that is C. That is pounds of cashews. The pounds of almonds we're going to buy are 1.5, so they are interchangeable. They are equal. So if we look here, here's where we substituted those two numbers in. Okay, whenever we change a letter for a number, that's called substitution. We are, just like if you're going to sub in soccer or in volleyball or in football, you are taking the place of someone else, which is just what the letters and the numbers do in the equations. So once you can substitute them in, you are then just going to multiply. This means to multiply. When numbers are side by side and one of them is in a parentheses, it means multiply. When we multiply those two things, we get 14.985 and 32.475. The only thing left to do is to add, so order of operations here. And you get $47.46. So therefore, it costs $47.46 to buy 1.5 pounds of almonds and 2.5 pounds of cashews. So if we look at this next one here, the cost to rent a scooter is $15.50 per hour. I might have been ahead of myself getting this text block out here. Per hour. And the cost to rent a watercraft is $22.80 per hour. Use the expression 55.5 S. I'm going to undo that. I want a straight line. Use the expression 55.5 S plus 22.8 W. Remember, this S is standing for the scooter and W is for watercraft. So if you're only renting for 1 hour, it's $15.50 for a scooter and $22.80 for a watercraft. But we are going to use an equation to find out what if we want it for more than an hour. How would we find out how much we need to pay? So use that expression to determine how much it would cost to rent a scooter for 3.5 hours and a watercraft for 1 3/4 hours. I wonder if I can get into my text box here. So we have 15.5 S plus 22.8 W. Okay, so this is our equation here. That's the first step, right? Just from the last problem. The first step is writing it out. The second step is then substituting in numbers for the letter that goes with it. So we have 15.5, and instead of S, S is the scooter. So the scooter is 3.5, so we're going to put 3.5. We're going to add that to 22.80, or just 8 zeros at the end of money, don't change anything. And that is going to be multiplied by 1 3/4, which is 1.75. Okay, so first step is writing the equation. Second step is substitution. So now I'm going to move this down here for our second step. Third step is to multiply them. So 15.5 times 3.5 is 54.25 plus 22.8 times 1.75 is $39.90. So that's our third step, is to multiply. And then the fourth and final step in this equation is to add those two things together, which gives you 94.15. down here. So what that means is, let's do a final statement. It means that it would cost $94.15 to rent a scooter for 3.5 hours and a watercraft for 1.75 hours. Okay, so that is the end of that question. Let's do example 3 and try it just so you have as many resources in your book as possible. So this one says, Malik and 2 friends earn M dollars in 1 week doing odd jobs. They split the earnings so that each friend gets 1/3 of the total earnings. Malik uses $32.50 of his earnings on lunch each week. Last week, the 3 friends earned $963. How much money did Malik have after paying for lunch? Okay, so again, look for the thing that needs to occur more than once and the thing that occurs just once. So if we look back and reread the question, it says Malik and 2 friends earn M dollars in 1 week doing odd jobs. They split the earnings so that each friend gets 1/3 of the total earnings. So whatever they get, they're going to divide by 3, and that's how much each person gets. So Malik uses $32.50 of his earnings on lunch each week. Last week, the 3 friends earned $9.63. How much money did Malik have left over for paying lunch? So each week, Malik earns $32.50. Whoa! I feel like that skipped ahead a whole lot. So it says, write an expression to represent how much Malik has left, then evaluate the expression for the given value. Okay, so 1/3 of what they earn, and what they earn is M, is Malik's. And he spent $32.50 last week on buying lunch. So 1/3 of what they earned, which was that $963, goes to Malik, and he's already spent some of that. He spent $32.50 of that already. So what does Malik have left? He has $288.5, because we have to get that 1/3 of 963. We divide that by 3. That's $321. And then we would subtract that 32.5, which would give us to 288.5. So Malik had $288.50 left after paying for lunch. Okay, so let's try this one. Amelia earns 8.74 per hour plus a gas allowance of $3.50 per day at her job. How much does Amelia's job pay in a day when she works 5.5 hours? Write an expression to evaluate for 5.5. Okay, so we need to find this one here, this 874 per hour plus a gas allowance of $3.50 per day at her job. Okay, because we're only evaluating for 5.5 hours, that's only 1 day. So that $3.50 is going to be a constant. It's only going to happen once because we're only talking about 1 day. So we have our 3.5, I'm going to put that first, plus, or let's do it the order that the problem says. So she gets 8.74 per hour. So I'm going to use H for hours. Okay, for every hour she works, she's going to earn 874. Then it says plus, so I know there's a plus sign, plus that $3.50 gas allowance. And like I said, because if it's only 1 day, she only gets that once. Now that we have our equation, we can now put in a number instead of H, which is 5.5 in this case. We're adding that $3.50 still. It's still a constant. We don't need to put it parentheses in there anywhere. So step 2. Step 3 is to actually go in there and multiply 8.74 times 5.5 is 48.05. 57 plus 3.50. Don't try to do too many steps at once, or you might make a silly mistake. So last step is to add that 3.5 to that 450, and it is 51.57. So what does that mean? That means that Amelia earned $51.57 in a day when she works 5.5 hours, is what that solution ends up being. Okay, so the two things we need to know is how to write an equation and then how to solve it, how to substitute. So look for the thing in the equation that happens more than once. If it's more than one thing, then they both have a variable. Once you find your equation, then find what the number and the letter are equal to. They're equal to each other. In this case, it was 5.5. And then you can change the letter for the number that it represents and then solve the equation.